Are Airbnbs really worth the hype? Well, today you're going to hear from somebody with real life experience. Big thanks to John Exnicious for dropping so much value today. We had a great conversation about long-term versus short-term rentals, and I think you're going to take out so much value from this episode. Consider sharing it with an investor or entrepreneur who might be interested or considering short-term rentals as an option. And if you're serious about creating long-term wealth through investing in real estate, make sure you're subscribed because we have plenty of great conversations coming your way about how to level up your real estate, your wealth building, your money, and your life. Thank you to our sponsor, real estate tax pro Bob Norton with Norton Accounting Services. Bob's goal is to help his clients become financially free using real estate. And let me tell you from personal experience, he really does. He focuses on real estate investors with clients in 48 states. He's been a resource to myself and many other investors. If you've ever wondered whether or not you should invest in Airbnbs or if long-term rentals are better, today you're going to find out some real raw truth about Airbnb from someone who's done exactly that, building wealth through investing. Today we have a great guest, one of my very good friends and competitors, John Exnicious. He's a fellow realtor, but we've known each other long before real estate, and he's a very successful realtor and also investor. And so would like to hear some words of wisdom from him. Welcome, John. How are you today?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm finally so blessed to be at this table. You know, the winner.
The winner? What you mean?
You know, I'm just teasing. I'm messing. Well, no, thank you. So before we start talking, let's start talking about how these cups are fake.
Snatch.
He has these cups, and first of all, I thought it said something else. I thought it was WTF.
What did you?
Yeah. So, yeah, you know. But, and they only had water in it, so I had to go aggravate his wife to make coffee. And she did.
And if you know my wife, it's not aggravating at all for her to make coffee.
No, she's like, that's my love language.
Yeah,
she all right, yeah, perfect. That's good. So, well, you need to put that in my WTF cup, and I'm going to go up to Will's office. So, but anyway, so no, thank you for having me. So we're going to talk about Airbnbs, I guess, is the deal, huh?
Yes. So the big thing is, what made you decide to get into short-term rentals? You were already doing long-term rentals. What made you make the plunge?
All right. So I'm really not the brightest bulb. I like things to be very simplistic when investing. And so I've always gone by the 1% rule, which actually that's something that you probably taught me back in the day when I first started in doing investments. And it's kind of a clear-cut way to know if something's in range of where it makes sense. So, that 1% rule has gotten a little more difficult, I think, in recent years.
Yeah. But you started Airbnbs before that, though, right? No.
It's been maybe 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 years.
Yeah. I thought you were doing it longer than that. But anyway.
Well, time flies.
It's hard to.
But either way, I was personally feeling like it was a little bit harder to get a deal to make sense. Based on what the interest rates were, the 1% rule, So I thought, well, what if I can do Airbnb as an option to have another way of making money, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, and so I learned a lot. So I'm going to kind of, I guess, tell you what I'd like to know.
Yeah, I mean, what was the journey like getting into it? What made you decide you were like, it's harder to find a 1% rule, you know? So.
Okay, so first thing is picking where to buy the Airbnb, right?
Yeah.
So my first thought was, well, maybe I'll buy a vacation home, and I was looking in Georgia, and thought, you know, there's this area in Georgia. I can't even remember the name. I ended up deciding not to do it. I went and looked at with a realtor and all this kind of stuff. But I decided not to do it as a rental for a vacation home, because I felt that I wasn't. It was an area that was kind of rural and up and coming. It wasn't quite to the level of like a Gatlinburg, you know. Mm-hmm. And I just wasn't confident that I could have a manager that would handle it well, that I wouldn't have to get involved, and being that it was so far away. So that scared me a little bit out of that.
Yeah.
So I ended up saying, okay, well, maybe I won't do that. Then in Hammond, where we are, I felt that there was a need, because we have, we're I-12 and I-55 between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, and there's people that are coming through constantly, and maybe they, would use it, corporate people, whatever. And then also just the college.
You find a lot of your Airbnb guests are like like transitory, or are they destination people? Are they like passing through, or they like want to become to Hammond?
So I'm finding it's a lot of people that are coming for business for Hammond, which I didn't realize. And there's also people that are coming for their kids who may play sports.
Sure, yeah. I figured there'd be
for
some
big
of that.
sporting events and things like that, and they're from out of town. So, and the thing about Hammond is they really don't have a really nice option close to town as far as a hotel. We kind of got the interstate, hotel motel vibe going.
Yeah.
And you're paying a hefty price.
But like walkable, which is what your downtown one is, walkable.
Right. So I already had a building downtown that had 2 residentials that I was long-terming. So I felt that this is a really good option because it's in a commercial area, walkable, and it's in a cool building. So,
That's the Hotworks building?
Yeah,
in downtown?
yes.
Okay, so that you started with that one before you built the fourplex.
Yes, and there was somebody else I knew who was doing it. There was a few people that were doing it, but only really one that I knew that was doing it in town, and it was successful from what I was told. So I started off with those, and so that's how I started. And then
What's like? How do you determine whether a property would be good for Airbnb versus a long-term rental, or is there a difference? Does it matter?
okay, well, I'm going to tell you my thoughts on it, but I don't know if
that's you are the guest on the podcast. That's why.
So one of the things that are concerning to me when investing in something for an Airbnb, and this is something that I pass along to a client as well, is that Airbnb can quickly be regulated by government. So I don't think you should buy a property based on the return of Airbnb as a sole answer.
Yeah.
So I think it should be more of a best case scenario, and the numbers should still work at some level for a more long-term person in it.
Yeah.
So
always have an exit plan. Like always have a what if what if it doesn't work out exactly how you thought it was?
But for me, or typically, those regulations are not going to be affect commercial zone properties.
Right, yeah.
To the level that it would in a residential zone. So I've chosen, while I do own long term, that I've focused the Airbnbs on my commercial zoned places.
Very smart. That's a good point.
Yeah. So that's what I was comfortable with. I'm not saying that there's a wrong or right, but that's kind of the avenue that I took. Is I took the ones that were commercial.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say, John, you mentioned us masterminding and your investor journey and all that stuff. You've always been very strategic about the way that you think through things. Like I don't often think before I just do, but you think a lot about it, and that's something that I've really. So it's an interesting. My point is, it's an interesting strategy because I don't know that I would have thought about that. But that's cool.
Yeah. Well, that's just because you're riskier than me.
I do. I take a lot of risk, which is a blessing and a curse. I mean, there's benefits to each thing. You know?
Yeah.
So I've teased you about like your,
I know.
lack of risk, but not bad.
I know. But when you're smarter than me, so you probably take a smarter risk than I do. So I'm a little scared. I don't know
about that.
Anyway, so
what was your ACT? No, I'm just kidding. I don't answer that.
I won't answer. So that was the decision on starting there. And then I had the opportunity to buy a lot that was still in the same area, and I built new construction that it made sense. And even there, I'm not risky enough to where I only turned 2 of them into Airbnb and 2 long-term, because I like that assurity of knowing what's coming.
That kind of balance.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the next one that I did was a camp. So that was on the Tickfall, where the Tickfall 200 takes place. And I chose that because, just like commercial, I think there's also Airbnb makes sense in a vacation or a leisure, a place like that. And it was a place within an hour from where I could still have my hands on it at some level.
Yeah.
So that ended up not really working out to the way that I expected. So
interesting.
Yeah. So, and I can talk to you a little more about that. And then the other one is in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, which is a really adorable town. It reminds me a little bit of Hammond in a way, but different.
But not nearly as good.
Yeah. So different for sure. But that one has also had its challenges. It's an hour and a half away. So Yeah, but that investment probably would not work if it was not Airbnb. That's something that the long term doesn't make sense. However, I was willing to do it on that one because that area has a great deal of appreciation. So I know that I'm winning on the appreciation end of the property, whereas maybe in Hammond, it's not as things don't as quickly appreciate. So it's important that the rental made sense too. So.
Yeah, that's an interesting. So one thing I've learned about investing in different markets, and I'm very Hammond Ponchatoula heavy. Like I don't really invest outside of these markets, but I've recognized about our market, it's very stable, but a lot of other markets are very volatile and they go up. Like talk about the Florida market, like high highs, low lows. You know, when the financial crisis happened, people were, giving away homes in Florida. Not so much here. I was selling real estate during that time and it was a 10, 20%, sometimes 25% dip, but it wasn't like 75% of the value was gone,
Yeah.
So I think there's a case to be made for different styles of investing, more volatile and balancing. Like like I really actually think that 2 long-term and 2 short-term in your fourplex downtown, I think that's a really good way to mitigate risk, and it's a wise thing to do.
Yeah.
So.
And I think if we're talking about Hammond and Tangipahoa Hope Parish specifically, and whether it's long-term or short-term, to your point, that it's actually a really good area to invest for holding.
I agree. Yeah.
So appreciation on value, across the board, across the country, we've had appreciation everywhere.
Correct.
So everybody's experienced that. But the typical is that things don't plummet here, but things don't really rise very quickly either.
Yeah.
So for somebody from looking for cash flow perspective, Tangipahoa Parish, it seems to be, the taxes are better, so your expenses are a little bit better on that, and just. It makes sense a lot for that, whether long term or Airbnb.
I use the example like this is some markets, this is our market. Like it's much more even out.
So another thing that I have so right now I'm turning those 2 original ones that I did back into long term.
The 2
upstairs in the commercial historic building. Yep.
All right. So that's interesting. How come?
So what I discovered, while my bookings looked good, so at the time.
So wait, back up for a second.
Yeah.
So you have, and I mean, if this is TMI, just let me know. But how many long terms versus how many short terms do you have? Do you know off the top of your head?
Well, I have 18 units total. Outside of my personal properties that are for my leisure, that are in commerce for that, and
what 5? So now 5 or 6.
So it was 5 short terms.
Okay.
At one point it was 6, so it's 5, and now it's going down to 3.
Okay, so roughly 30% short terms, but now shrinking it down to.
Don't mess with me on that. I can't do percentages. My ACT score wasn't that good.
I actually don't know your age. Yeah, but whatever. Yeah, so
you can only assume.
Yeah. So you're reducing your percentage, and you were primarily. You had mostly long term. Yeah. Well, that's helpful to know, just because I mean, like. You and I have talked about this. You actually helped me confidently go into short-term rentals for a brief time. And then I realized, like, I didn't really think it was a little bit better cash flow, but I was like, this is a lot more management and hassle-wise, And so I know that that all factors into it, because you might make a little bit more money, but if it's like 3 times the work.
Yeah. So, so prior to me turning them to Airbnbs, the market dictated that I could get about $1,700 per unit there for my units there a month, and I was covering basically just the water for the building, and I think that was it. So
$1,700 a month per unit. How big are they?
Big, but they're 2-bedroom, 1 bath.
I was about to say, I thought they were 2-1s. $1,700 for a 2-1.
But they're huge.
Included
they're 1,200. They're 1,200. They're 1,200 square feet.
Yeah. No. I'm not.
Yeah. And one of them was actually one of them is like a very strange layout that's almost shotgun, but it's very, very big, and it's 3-bedroom but 1 bath. Okay. So anyway, and that's me getting somebody there in 30 days. Maybe I could have gotten a little bit more or a little bit less. I don't know, but 1,700 was the number.
Yeah,
so
no, that's
whatever.
good.
But so turning them over to Airbnb on a good month, 3,800, 4,000, and on a good month.
So double.
Yeah, on a bad month, 2,000 or so.
So still better.
Yeah. So, but this is what I discovered more recently. So there was an influx of people that started to do Airbnb for one. So it wasn't as many on before. So we had a little bit more competition.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. So, but actually, I don't really think that was really the biggest deal. I think so for that building, because it's an older building, the utility bills were.
Oh, right.
I mean, there's sometimes, in the heat of August, it could be $350 a month that I got hit for that. And then I paid somebody to manage because I wasn't going to manage. So I had a percentage off of that. Right. And then I was paying, the internet that I wasn't paying before.
Yeah.
And then I would have to replace things when somebody broke a chair or whatever that looked like.
Yeah.
So these little hits that are
a lot more wear and tear.
Yep. So when I analyzed over a year's time, I'm sitting here thinking this high number, oh man, you're doing really good.
Yeah. Top line looked great.
Yeah. Really, it was equivalent to me renting them out for like $1,400 after all the expenses were removed.
Oh, so actually not even net better.
Not for those.
Yeah.
So now my ones that are the new construction ones that the light bill is lower.
Okay.
So, and the other thing that we have an environment too that the expenses have gone up too, right? So the insurances. So this is a historic 100-year-old building. So my insurance is a way more than on a new construction building with a new roof.
Yeah.
So my expenses kind of got higher on that building. So after kind of realizing that, I'm like, okay, well, what about if I just do this as a furnished long term? I don't even really know if there's a need for that, but I sure as hell don't want to move all this stuff that I purchased. And I spent about $12,000.
Yeah. I know that was
per unit.
That's an upfront cost that you don't have to have.
Yes.
On a long term.
Yes. So factoring all that in, I was like, all right, well, let me just turn it over to furnished long term. Well, I'm getting $2,000 on one of them and $1,850, and they're taking over all the expenses. So now I'm better than I was before.
Gotcha. Because of the furnishings.
I think
this is for the old building. This is for the Hot Works building, not your fourplex.
Correct. You're correct. The other ones I'm keeping because I'm doing really well there because expenses are low and they're performing just about equally as the others.
So I misunderstood when you said earlier you were taking the two long short terms and turn them into long terms. I thought you were talking about the fourplex.
No.
You're talking about the downtown building.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the downtown building is actually the one that
got you into it.
And just by looking at it, that's kind of the cooler spot.
It's a cooler vibe. Yeah.
It's a historic building. It's right across from PJ's where everybody hangs out.
Yeah.
And it's right in the center. So from a standpoint of marketability, that's the one that really looks cooler.
Yeah.
But it wasn't necessary. And what I found is corporate people, they kind of like the clean and pretty and nice. The air condition is like, perfect in every room, and they kind of like
not as much character, more just like dependable, clean, like a hotel room.
And so if they're coming repeated, they're more worried about comfort than trend, than feel and whatever. So
so here's kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to articulate this question really well, but like from an enjoyment standpoint, and we're talking about Airbnbs versus long terms. Like I felt like when I had my short terms, it was a little bit like I have short term rentals. Like it's a little bit of maybe swagger in that. Like it was kind of cool because it's a really cool thing. Like you hear a lot of, especially a few years ago, a lot of people were talking about short term rentals, Airbnbs. And if you had that, and the other cool thing I liked about it particularly was if I had a friend who was coming in town, I could be like, yeah, you can just stay on my Airbnb, like not even charge them sometimes, or like people coming in town, like family and stuff like that. I liked that part of it. It was kind of like something that you had to, but do you like enjoy that?
I do. I don't enjoy any of the having to manage it or any of that.
Oh, yeah.
But I enjoy that. I like design to a certain level, and then it's a cool building, and it's in a cool spot, and I could say, yeah, I have that spot for you to go. That does run it, but that on a scale of 1 to 10 on making me make a decision financially is like nothing really, But I mean, it is there. It is cool to have.
It is cool to have.
But what I will tell you that I've also, now that I've processed how Airbnb really works, I really kind of don't agree to it in a lot of ways. So I have a whole new...
I didn't know we were getting philosophical here. What you mean? Tell me about this.
So I really have an understanding. So in New Orleans right now, there's all kinds of lawsuits and stuff between city council. They're really trying to shut down Airbnb completely altogether.
In New Orleans.
In New Orleans. Mm-hmm. So anybody over that way, I'm like, you may not want to mess with that right now. And right now, they've been going back and forth. They changed it over to a lottery. At one time, the city council was getting sued because they were saying you had to have your homestead exemption on the property, and you had to have somebody living there. And then they said that's actually what do you call it? Not prejudice. What's another word for like discrimination? Yeah, and all this kind of stuff. So they're and a lot of the big cities like New York City, they don't allow it either. Anything 30 days or less, you cannot do. So, and I'm not a person that typically, I would say that on a scale, whether I don't like regulation in general because that's not my personality. However, now that I can see why that is needed at some level. You see
the purpose of the rule, maybe like not for regulation's sake.
So really, the issue is that the Airbnb initially when they came about was really for people who, maybe lived on their property and they wanted to rent a room, right, or they had a guest
side
house.
hustle,
So it helped them make some money, maybe to help with their bills. But it also almost creates a feel like in Europe where you're getting this authentic stay. You have somebody greeting you, giving you, a biscuit that they baked for you in the morning, and all this kind of stuff.
You're part of the family,
yes.
A little bit. Yeah.
Yes. So that gives this feel of authenticity when you travel, but then all of a sudden, business people come in and they're like, well, we can make some money out of this, right? So
the evil businessman.
Yeah.
This podcast is sponsored by New American Funding, the family team where family and finance meet. With years of experience helping buyers achieve their home ownership dreams, they're passionate about guiding you every step of the way. Whether you're a first-time home buyer ready to refinance or adding to your real estate portfolio, the family team is here to help you feel confident and cared for through the process. And let me tell you, we've done business with them for many years, and it's absolutely true. They give a personal touch, and we love working with them.
So we'll scale this and do this as a business. And really, they're not held to the same accountability as maybe a hotel that has to pay taxes and contributes to the environment that they're in. And then they come in and change neighborhoods to where your neighbor has a lot of in and out people that may be throwing parties or whatever. And really, and that's why in residential areas, I'm not really a big fan of Airbnb. I think that it really should be designated more for commercial or be at least more well planned out.
But doesn't that counteract what you said about the authenticity factor? Because it's necessarily inauthentic and business if it's in a commercial.
I'm saying that is if you're not on site. If you're on site and you're living in your house and you want to
I see what you're saying. So residential, you're kind of cool with it if it's
you're not turning the residence into basically a makeshift hotel.
Little hotel.
And
you're actually living there and you're using it as
and then also people when that happens too, there's a risk there when you go to I stayed in an Airbnb in Brazil during the Olympics, and the pictures were beautiful online. My box spring was held up by a plastic bucket. So,
very nice.
So,
very nice.
And the shower the secondary shower was shared. Like, how you see those wet areas? That's like the shower and the tub and the shower. This was a toilet with a shower that you pulled above the toilet. It was the most bizarre thing. But these things that are not on, you don't have anybody to call if something's
right. There's not like a customer service. Like there's no recourse if you're like, what in the world? So,
but then on a flip side, one of the coolest Airbnbs I stayed in was on somebody's property that they had this rainforest vibe in Hawaii, and it was a guest lodge that they had on their property, and they, they had stuff for us when we came, and it was like a family thing, so.
But I mean, shouldn't the reviews kind of like mitigate that? Isn't that like the accountability there?
They do to a certain level, but
that wanted,
but you can
Brazil?
even play. So
it had good reviews, I guess. They didn't have the bucket for that.
Fair, but I mean, the other thing is that they can change management, when and start all over again
and start fresh. Okay.
And I mean, it's a system. So I have things to say about that aspect. I don't love about it.
So do you think? I mean, you obviously think there's a market for it. I mean, sort of where I was going to go with some of my questions, which might not be applicable now, but like, would you recommend somebody, if they're going to start, rental property in general, would you recommend starting with Airbnbs or starting with long term? Or
I would say what is your goal? So Airbnb, if it's in a vacation tourist driven spot that is not typically a residential area where people are living long term, for example, Orange Beach.
Yeah.
And so, but my thoughts on that, unless you're doing it on a very big level and scaling it, I think those are more instances where I want to enjoy my own experience at the place that I own, and I want to be able to have the opportunity to offset some of the costs when I'm not using it. So I like it for that.
Do you stay in your camp on the Tickfall?
Well, that's why I got rid of it. I wasn't staying in it.
Okay.
And the juice wasn't really making,
as Jeff said, right?
Right. So it wasn't. So it wasn't paying the bills, and I wasn't using it when I wasn't, so I didn't even have a boat. So it's like,
Yeah, because one thing, and I'll link this in the comments link this in the show notes. But I have a great camp that I think is a candidate for this. I was texting with you about it the other day on Meisner Road. It's on the Amite River. It's a lovely place. Long-term homeowner is selling, and I think it has an application for an Airbnb. It's bigger, like you could say as a family, and it's got a couple of boat slips and stuff like that. So
So what I would say is. I think it does as a secondary home for somebody that wants to offset, but I don't think if they're looking to make cash flow.
Well, and I think that's a better application because it's something. If I wanted a river camp and wanted to offset some of the costs, I think this is the perfect camp for it. It's not. I say camp. It's not a camp. It's a very high-end house. It's
and I have one in Terry Harbor right now, similar that
right up the road.
Yep, and it has an Airbnb. They're currently doing that. They're using it. They live in Baton Rouge, and they use it on. So, but and at one time they were doing really well, and it kind of got a little bit less, and
sure.
So it's really, I think they discovered too, as they started not using their camp as much, that maybe it didn't really make sense. So now they're selling it,
which is what you did. That's why you know. I'm making a note because I thought of a marketing idea for it. So
okay, cool.
Thanks.
So I think it's really great in those applications to offset a vacation home that if you're the kind of person that you like to know where you're going every year and you like your spot and you think you're going to use your spot to offset. I like it for that, and I do like it for it can be a bit. I mean, there are companies that go in and they will sublease out a building, right? And and basically pay long-term rent on a building, and then they just manage a bunch of units that are manageable next one. People are making businesses out of this. Yeah. And so it just depends on where you're at. But to me, I think it makes most sense on a really big scalable level, probably, as far as making money, or to offset costs on vacation.
Homes, because we've looked at several times at like we go to the beach every year, and actually we stay in the same exact unit for most of those times for the last 10 years, and I'm like, maybe I should have bought this one. But then every time I look at the numbers, I'm like, I can actually make better cash flow on my residential rentals, and I have all long terms now, and actually rent my vacation every year, and I don't have to worry about hurricanes or the upkeep or like somebody trashing it or breaking stuff.
Let me just tell you something. I've never seen more gross things on a blanket in my whole entire life. Or a chair. It almost makes me
what can you share?
Right. Like, all I can say is it makes me not want to ever go to a hotel or anything, because people are gross. So So you have to be prepared to and have a good cleaner. I mean, everything. I mean, that's another thing. So if it's not scalable to find a housekeeper that is willing to work for the amount of money that somebody's probably willing to pay in that market for a cleaning fee, you're going to have to give them enough business to make it worth to them, because they're going to have to, it's hard for them to not have scheduled regular times for their business and be on call unless they have enough of them that are constantly coming. So
that's probably like a quick turn, almost urgent thing. Like, hey, somebody checked out. Somebody's checking in tonight. Like, can you you have to get over there.
Yes.
You know?
So
that's hard.
Ocean Springs, it hasn't been a problem because the neighborhood that I bought in, it's a bunch of cottages. A lot of people doing the same thing. So they share the same person.
Yeah.
So like in a complex, like in Gulf Shores or whatever, that would be the same idea. It's easy to do. Now, if you're some cabin in the woods, that's off the beaten path, to get somebody out there, that could be an issue. So I'm a little concerned right now because the two that I am keeping, I'm losing two that we're feeding the housekeeper that gave me a good deal, right? So there's that to consider.
So, like, generally speaking, does your risk factor, your risk tolerance, do you think that informs your desire to like lessen your Airbnb holdings, like your short-term rental holdings?
No. I think it's just experience I'm looking at, is the money worth the amount of effort?
Yeah, like this is juice worth the squeeze.
Yeah. So, and on the ones on Oak, it's very worth it right now. Yeah. So if that changes, I'm flexible,
Yeah.
And Ocean Springs, I don't think it's going to change.
Yeah.
However, however, in a year and a half, 2 years that I've owned it, I've already had $40,000 in equity from it because going up, because I'm in an area that, and I mean, that's just a recent sale within a month ago. So I knew that was a unique enough property. Ocean Springs, by the way, regulated 75 permits only allowed for Airbnbs. However, I bought in a community that was commercially zoned.
Okay.
So these little cottages are all in this neighborhood that is like basically rentals, and it's in a commercial zone. So they did not have to have the residential Airbnb permit that everybody else does. So it's like the whole neighborhood qualified for it, which is not too much of that is walkable to downtown Ocean Springs. So so that was unique in itself, which made me do it.
Yeah. So is that a problem in Hammond Ponchatoula area? Do you think that's regulation is impending or
I don't.
Like that?
I don't think so, though, because truthfully, it's not being utilized enough to be a problem.
Yeah.
And
makes sense to me.
I think we have way many more things to put effort in to have to deal with that. Probably more costly for them to have to regulate than
than it costing them. Or whatever.
Yeah. So I just don't think they have their stuff together really enough to take that on. So I'm not worried about that here. And also, I think generally the tangible Paris in general tends to lean towards less regulation, in my opinion, compared to like St. Tammany or something like that. Mm-hmm. So
that's why I like it.
Yeah. So, but as more people push the boundaries on things that could affect others, that is when regulation tends to come in, right? So when you're stepping on too many toes in the other direction, and right now there's just not enough of it to really bother.
It hasn't made a big splash enough to. Yeah. So for somebody is a little bit more interested in doing some of the work themselves, and somebody who has like more time than money to pay somebody. Do you think that would be a great way to like really lean into short-term rentals as a way to grow?
I think it would, but again, my opinion in most cases is that you would want the long-term rental to at least be decent enough to where if it didn't work out.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Especially if you're doing it on a small level, if it's just like one property, your first property,
That's good advice. It's very wise, I think, advice.
So, but you may say, you know what? I really wanted, in order for this deal to work, I want to have $400 per door for cash flow. So I need to at least cash flow $400. Okay. Well, maybe what you bought it at, you're going to cash flow $100 or $200. But if you Airbnb it, you could cash flow $800. Then maybe take that risk. Yeah. But you at least knowing that you're going to cover your bill. If not, but definitely don't go in not covering your bill plus a little land. So it's just. You got to look at it both ways, but I would say don't use it as a complete reliant.
Yeah.
At least that's how I think. But I'm
No,
not saying
that's.
right, but
I mean, I've the reason you're on here is because I do value your perspective and opinion. I think you're a savvy investor.
yeah, it's not my 21 ACT. It's 21.
That was not. I don't care.
I'm joking. I'm joking. I don't care.
So, yeah, my kids are taking ACTs right now, so that's why.
Yeah, they're probably like 34s already.
No, Anyway, I'm not going to tell my daughter's ACT score. She would probably kill me.
It's 24.
I will neither confirm nor deny. All right. So,
The mother is a teacher, and their father's kind of, I guess, somewhat smart. So I didn't have that genetic pool on my side.
quit dogging on your family, dude. You're a smart guy. Like,
no, I'm just joking. That's my sense of humor.
John self-deprecates a lot. Like,
It's a sense of humor.
Yeah,
I believe half of it.
Yeah. You made me lose my train of thought. That's okay. So
Drink from your WTF cup, and you'll get your.
I have some rapid fire questions, but before that, like I really think your investing journey is cool. And tell me, and I think I know some of the answer to this, but I want our listeners to hear this because I'm a big believer in investing in rental property. I think you and I both feel very strongly about that as an asset. Somebody once told me we're in the most noble profession because did you know this, that it's actually Mark King, who was with Keller Williams, or is with Keller Williams, but he's the president. So the number one determiner of wealth is home ownership. So that kind of like makes us in a pretty noble profession. But beyond home ownership, like we've taken the step to invest in real estate. So I'm a big believer in that. How has investing in real estate changed your life? Like what is that building that long-term wealth from short-term, long-term, just generally speaking? What has that meant to you? Like, how's that?
Yeah. So I will, I feel like I need to give you props at some level. You try and take a lot of responsibility for my real estate career, but I usually don't let you have that whole deal. But I will give you for sure. You gave me can you say balls on this? You gave me the balls to take risks.
Yeah. Guts.
So to kind of to see what you were doing, and then I'm like, okay.
You were like, if he can do it.
Well, no, I mean, it just
no. I know pioneers help pave the way. Yes, like it's easier to.
But what I will tell you is, what I don't know that if I would have gotten in it as quickly as you is the one thing that you did in the beginnings of your starting to invest in real estate is you were really good about budgeting and doing the work yourself, and whereas I have no patience to even hammer a nail into a wall, and also I got it to a point in my work that I was really lucky that I had a really good income coming in.
Yeah.
To where
from your real estate sales
from sales that I was able to start doing that. Mm-hmm. So because that's where I feel like I lack in being able to give advice is where do you really get the money and to start for that initial, because you got to get in the game so that it can.
And the first one is your hardest one. Yeah. I tell people that all the time. Yeah. Like I remember, I always tell this story. I was buying an 8-plex and I went and looked at 3 of the units. And it was still during due diligence, and it was running out. And I was like, should I go look at the other 5 units? Like, I should probably do that, And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, I'm about to spend more money. That was the biggest thing I'd ever bought at the time. I'm about to spend more money than I've ever spent. And I'm trying to decide if I even should go look at them. Like, am I crazy?
Yeah.
But my realization of that was like, the first one I bought, I was sweating like I couldn't sleep. I went and saw it like 15 times. I ran the numbers 100 times. You're stressed out because you don't know.
Yeah.
You just don't know. It's unknown. But by the time I was buying an 8-plex, even though it was way bigger, way a lot more money, more risk, not really, because I knew it already. And I'd done it so many times, I was like, I don't even really need to see them all.
Right.
Which is crazy.
Well, I
it's
think
easier.
And that all has to do with risk tolerance, but I'm going to always lean on the less risky side of things. And I think red light, green light things is important.
Yeah.
So once you get your first one and you get a tenant in and you feel comfortable, and then maybe the tenant, you work out what didn't work, what didn't, and then you can feel, okay, how do I feel with that to take the next step? Yeah. But as far as me, I could say that because I'm in real estate where we're in a commission-based job, which I've never so far have not, I had to rely on rental, but I'm relying on my own self. I have no spouse or anybody helping me pay bills or whatever. So it has been kind of this little security blanket to know that if
Like a steady.
if stuff hits the fan, I have cash flow coming in, and I technically, if I, at this point in my life, I've really wanted to pare down and live, I wouldn't be going on vacations much or whatever, but I could probably to live an average, in my opinion, pay my bills at my house and go to the grocery, I guess, So, but staying home, not working, I guess would make you spend more money. So that wouldn't work for me. But
you're saying you could do that on your rentals right now?
Yeah, I could do that on my rentals. I could live,
That's freedom right there.
You pare down. Yeah. But I do know where I built, I at least have the freedom to where if I had to cut costs and live off of just rentals, I'm not going to be destitute living under a bridge or in somebody's garage, which I always think that I am, and I'm always asking if I can be there if I need to.
Yeah,
but
well, this apartment
thank you. No, it's really nice. The bathroom was nicer than I thought. So
could I Airbnb this out?
Water here unless I aggravate your wife, but that's fine.
Could this be Airbnb?
Well,
Rhonda already said no. It's all good.
No.
But okay, well that's cool. Yeah, and I want to go back to our journey because I do try to take credit for you getting into real estate.
Of course, you want to go back. Mm-hmm.
Now I like this little story about us.
Yeah.
So I met John. You went to high school with my sister.
No, I went with your brother. But I knew your sister first, because she was friends with a girl that I dated way back in the day, and we met at Southeastern and had that connection.
Yeah.
And then
so you became a client. I was selling real estate a little bit earlier than you, and sold you a house.
Yeah.
For some reason, you decided to move up to Hammond Ponchatoula.
Yeah.
Why did?
Yeah, because me and my friend from high school, we were living in a mother-in-law house in Old Metairie that we were spending tons of money, and I was in a $40,000-$50,000 desk job, and I was like, how do you even save? I like to do stuff, so I wasn't going to really save if I continue spending this money. So RD loan, there was zero money down in Tangipahoa Parish.
Yeah.
And I already had a comfort zone of knowing Southeastern. I had an aunt that moved up to Ponchatoula, so I'm like, I know people, I have some past friends that are still here, so I'm like, and it was a 45-minute commute to where I was working. I was working in St. Rose Business Park right off the interstate, right off by the airport. So it was an easy commute. So that was what got me to look this way. And I think it was your knowledge, or through you, at some point I talked to you and learned that you can get a zero money down loan. So
Yeah.
So, and I think that's what sparked me to be like, okay, well, maybe this is an option just to come this way. If I remember right. It's been a long time,
and I always tell people this to this day. John is one of the best salespeople that I've ever met. You're a fantastic person and realtor, and you've helped coach me through sales situations. So I saw that in you. I was like, man, and you were in sales, right? You were selling.
Yeah, I was in sales, but so we ended up. If you remember right, we had an offer in on a really old house that financially, because I was zero money down loan, it didn't make sense. The one on Charles, yeah.
I forgot about that. That was preceded.
So I went through the whole process of buying a house and realized that financially, I wasn't.
You wish you would have bought that house now?
No, because I couldn't afford it then.
Yeah,
so it wouldn't have made sense. But so I bought new construction in a production neighborhood, but it was super convenient to the interstate, no character at all, but nothing to do to it. Didn't have to worry about anything, and it was just plug and play, and I could pay the bill without a problem.
Do you remember how much you spent on that house?
Yeah, $140,000, I think.
And how much is that house worth today?
Probably $225 maybe or something like that.
Beer, what?
Yeah,
12, 13 years ago.
Yeah.
Has it been that long?
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So anyway. But through that process, I was in a sales job where I was base salary plus commission, and being that it was only me and I'm not a big risk taker, to think to go being a real estate agent, that wouldn't be my thing, because it's commission only and you throw into the wood, fire. And I just bought a house. So, that wasn't probably the deal. But through that process, Christy Favron, who was the salesperson, I had kept in touch with her at some level, and she explained how those reps get paid, and they get somewhat of a security based salary, and then at the time, and then they got paid on sales. So that is what spurred me to go get into that. And then that was the kind of stepping stone to see, okay, I can do this. And then
I always, that's the part I like to take credit for, because I'm like, you need to get into real estate. You need to get into real estate. That's how it happened in my head. I don't really remember how it actually happened, but I was like, you need to be selling real estate, dude. It's fun. You would love it. Like, you'd be good at it. And I'm glad you have. And it's really been fun to be across the table from you a lot of times and in business with you in lots of different situations.
Well, and my, what I discovered in my, I'm motivated by pain and fear, which is not probably healthy, but knowing that you could at any moment not have money makes me keep going after more and more and more and more. Yeah. Which I don't know if that's a positive or a negative, but I remember when I was in an inside sales job where I sold datacom, cabling, and security equipment, and I didn't even understand what I was selling.
Exciting.
I know. So it was business to business sales. I'm not a techie guy. I'm not really smart. That doesn't really get me off to talk about wire, So I feel like it's a little bit like, I like the emotion of a resident.
It's a roller coaster. Like, it's like, people are like,
and it keeps you on your toes. I remember when I was in a cubicle, it was like, oh my gosh, the break is to go to the coffee room and get a coffee, so I don't have to like have my headset on. Like, it was just miserable, So to think that that's what I was doing, I was like, I don't know, So, but it was a steady paycheck and whatever. You get in that.
But this is exciting. Like, it's stressful and emotional, but there's exciting.
It's a lot of problem. It's a lot of constant problem solving.
Yeah,
I would say. Not
and
rocket
helping
science.
Deals come together and like helping people, like just making sure their needs are met,
Yeah. Shielding them from maybe some of the stress so that, they don't have that on them. And
helping. And this goes back to what I would like super fill your cup on, like helping people get out of their own way. Because the house that I live in right now, I don't think I would own were it not for you helping me get out of my own way. And this is 5 years ago. Like, I was like, in my head about stupid stuff. And you were like, Will, dude, like, this is an amazing deal. Like, you should absolutely do this. Like, quit.
Yeah. Well, and I think also it's just
and you were sincere about that. Yeah, I knew you didn't have like a sales dog in the hunt,
Yeah. No, I didn't make any money. I was making some money on what I do, but no. But the thing too is, I think when you're in, I think, you're very in your zone, and I'll sometimes say that you kind of have that,
the blinders on
on the deal. Like, and maybe you don't even realize that maybe what's in where some of the goals should be.
The bigger picture. You're like, dude, your wife loves this house. Yeah. You love this house. Like, do something that doesn't have a dollar sign attached to it, for crying out loud.
Right. Like, when you're in real estate, especially in investing, every real estate you can look at as an investment.
It has to have an ROI. And I think that was what you told me. You said, like,
your personal home is different.
You don't have to have an ROI attached to this. Like,
yes,
this doesn't have to.
This is for your personal enjoyment. This is what makes you happy. Yeah. Does not have to have a dollar sign on it. And also the acknowledgement of, like, you sometimes, if you're in it, you don't realize where you are and where your goals were. Like, I'm sitting here going, I have faith that you're going to continue to make more and more and more and more money. And like, when you lay this out, like, okay, this might not be perfect in your head until 3 years from now, but the actuality is like, you've already here and you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so I'm glad that worked out.
Yeah. Thank you.
We wouldn't be in this podcast room if it was house.
So I got some
WTF cups.
Here, let's like
WTF.
I guess we got a drink. All right. Yep. Rapid fire questions. Worst Airbnb experience ever, both staying in one and owning one. In one sentence.
One sentence is, a contractor I gave $2,000 to do work and he didn't show up and didn't do it and turned off his phone, and that's recent. Ocean Springs. Boom.
Nice.
So,
okay.
I have other ones. I mean,
what about I don't want this to be a whole nother podcast.
People do gross things on blankets and chairs and. everywhere. Curtains get pulled down when there's no reason for them to be pulled down. You know what I'm saying? I'm not in a lot of that.
I'm scared to elaborate on that, so I won't.
I mean, you can read between the lines. You don't have to.
Yeah.
So
your home is often your largest investment. Trust the professionals at Florida Lee Law and Title for reliable, secure closings. With 10 offices across South Louisiana, Florida Lee is your trusted partner to ensure the title to your home and the money you invest are secure. The experienced attorneys and staff at Florida Lee can also take care of your real estate planning and succession needs as well. Florida Lee Law and Title, Louisiana's leader in reliable, secure closings. And let me tell you, we do the vast majority of our closings with Florida Lee. We have had great service. The attorneys here are just fantastic. So we love doing business with them. We highly recommend them.
So I'm trying to think if there's anything crazy. Like I didn't have anybody like, do a, like I've heard stories of people like, devil worshippers cutting chicken heads off, and that hasn't happened to me.
That's good.
But my places aren't in New Orleans. That's more of a voodoo deal. We're in Hammond.
Okay. All right, interesting.
But
biggest rookie mistake you ever made in real estate with a rental? Let's just put it like
putting too much trust in someone based on a connection or peripheral knowing them, and not really putting them through the normal process of qualification.
What? I don't even understand what you. Yeah, like
sorry. I know this person. They work for this person that I know. They seem to be normal. They need a place.
Okay.
This is easy.
Yeah.
Because I peripherally know who they are. Seems okay, whatever.
Okay.
And maybe I didn't put the same bit of, normal, what I would do is a background check and things like that. And I just kind of like threw them into the place to fill a gap. And
that's so interesting to me, because you are probably one of my like go-to advice people when it comes to how to hire somebody. Because I'm like, John sees things that I normally.
Well, this is somebody that I was doing business with,
so it kind of like emotional shield.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't even emotional, but they worked at an office that I did a lot of business, and they seemed.
You just assumed a lot of things without checking. Okay.
Yep. Just and a lot of times I think too, you want things. Which this is, I mean, I think we all want, like, sometimes what's easy, it's just easy, and you have in your head, well, you fill the gap out of ease rather than really maybe going through the process that you need to be to make sure that it's correct, because we all want it to be a certain way. You have this vision of what it is, and if it's easy, let's just do it. But it's
really good. That's good advice. Yeah. So much for the rapid fire nature of this conversation.
Sorry,
but
I'm talking.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
It's good. What is the best piece of advice that you wish you would have had when you started Airbnb specifically?
Gosh, I don't know on that. Damn, I should have.
You're really screwing up this rapid fire.
Okay, that's why I don't like. I don't like games that you have to like fast. I'm not a fast person. 21 on every thing. I think probably the it really is that you have to be really willing to manage and pay attention to what's going out, not just what's coming in. So you have to have really good, a more keen eye on
dialed in P&L, like expense management.
You have to be more dialed in on what's going out, because there's more factors that are not typical or consistent. What is it called? Fixed. There's a lot of unfixed factors
like
that happen more.
Variable costs.
Variable. Yeah.
Do you have any like favorite real estate resources, like a book or a podcast? I know you're not like a big book person, but podcast.
You're one of my favoriits. I watch this podcast every now and then. No, you do? I mean, not a lot, but I do. I dial in a little bit.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So
I'm your favorite one?
No, definitely not. Truth be told, the only reason I probably watch it is because I know you and I'm interested from that aspect.
Yeah.
I'm not really a podcast guy. I'm not really a reader. Readers are leaders, whatever. But I'm more of I learn from my peers that I respect and and what went wrong for you, whatever.
Yeah, you're a super relational learner.
Yeah,
and like that's a gift. I mean, So cool. Airbnb or long term, which is more
long term?
Okay, which is more stressful?
Airbnb probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So someone's listening, they're on the fence about Airbnbs. What's 10-second advice that you would give them?
10-second advice?
Yeah.
You counting right now?
You're already 5 in. Sorry.
I can't do 10
I'm sorry. I'll slow it down.
I mean, my real advice is that to make sure that you're not just basing it strictly on the Airbnb income, especially if you're somebody just going into one deal, and especially if you're getting started this way.
Yeah.
Just don't just on that.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad that you came to talk to this. I love having you on the podcast. John is my friend, and I appreciate the words of wisdom. I think you've shared a lot of great things, and you sell yourself short too often, man.
Oh, here we go. All right.
So, yeah, we're gonna start crying here. This will be. I'm just kidding.
All right. Wouldn't be the first time, probably, but that's all right.
Thanks for listening today. I hope you got something out of this. And if you have any questions about real estate or Airbnbs, John's a good guy to talk to. So
thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Peace out.
Boom.